Welcome to another More Than Walking video podcast discussion, where we seek to encourage dialogue on a variety of topics with the unique perspectives of people with spinal cord injuries and other disabilities. It is our goal for these conversations to make us think critically and for us to all leave with a newfound sense of belonging in a world where we have more things in common than we do different. And tonight's topic is wellness and recovery. And part of me and John's ongoing discussion about this is, how do we detox from the world around us when it comes down to our personal health and well-being? You know, we just talked at length about COVID and living in this post-COVID world, and you know how stressful it can be when you're just trying to breathe a little bit. And we're very interested in hearing how you guys have dealt with, you know, wellness and recovery throughout, you know, dealing with your spinal cord injury. Everybody has had a different level of injury. Everybody has been injured differently in terms of what caused the initial SCI. But from that time on till current, how have you been able to manage, you know, your emotions, manage, you know, even the company you keep with how they deal with it, because they can be sometimes more stressful. You know, if you want to open up the door with your foot or something like that, somebody might say, hey, look, I got that. It might stress you out over time because you're like, you know, I'm still very capable to perform and do some of the things that I would normally do. I'm just finding different ways to do that. So we're going to discuss that tonight. But before we get started, I am your host, Corey Feasley, an aspiring hip hop artist here in the great state of Connecticut. And I would like for everyone to just take the time out and just introduce yourselves briefly and where you're calling in from.
Hi, I'm Sandy Jackson. I live in South Florida. I got a C4, C5. I think it's incomplete, or I'm not sure. I got into a car accident back in 2015. And I have a 14. My son is going to be 17 years old this year. He's the motivation of my life. He keeps me on my toes.
Hey guys, John Sigworth, C7 complete quadriplegic from Connecticut. Fell from a cliff, 2006? I don't remember how long that was ago, but great to see you all here.
Hello, Tahira Johnson. I was injured in 2007 playing roller derby in Chicago. I am here in Oklahoma City, somehow ended up in Oklahoma. And was there something else we were supposed to say about ourselves? I'm a C4, C5 incomplete.
I'm John Shefsel, and forgive me, I don't mean to be trespassing because I do not have a spinal cord injury. I live in Southern Connecticut and, you know, wanted to be both helpful, but as important, learn from the experiences of others. And, you know, this one is, you know, my guess is we experienced COVID and the post-COVID world, which I'm not sure we're in a post-COVID world yet. I think COVID has changed the world enough that we're going to be always aware of new waves of disease and the like, and we're going to be living differently. And that creates a bit of stress for all of us. And so wanted to sit in on this and learn a bit on that. And, you know, I'm here to learn.
Hi, my name is Ayana. I'm calling from New Orleans. I am a T12L1 spinal cord injury through a gunshot wound. And I'm 45. It happened when I was 16 years old. I have two kids, 18 and 25.
Hello, so I'm Jessica. I also don't have a disability, but I was invited by my husband, by Jonathan, today. And I know he really enjoys this space. And I've been hearing it's been coming bigger. The group is growing, so that's really nice to hear. And I was thinking just now about COVID, or how it's been this time. Like, particularly for me, I think it was significant because I grew up in Colombia and I moved here 6 years ago. And I think it has impacted me in a way because I guess, we were not able to participate socially in many things in 2020, but it was a time where I was starting to work, also maybe study, and I guess it made it a little harder for me to transition here.
My name's Jason Thurston. I live up in the Adirondack Mountains of New York, 6 million acre forest preserve. I like finding ways for people with disabilities to get outdoors. I broke my neck in my own swimming pool when I was 31. That was 18 years ago. And I'm a C6 incomplete. And COVID has actually impacted me in a mix of different ways because I've been able to participate without having transportation. Transportation has always been a problem. So I've been able to participate in a lot more things through Zoom. Been on a couple of different boards and been able to put some action forward, which wouldn't have been possible without COVID.
My name is Harley. I'm from the state of Washington. I had a diving accident on my 19th birthday in 1994. So I've been in a wheelchair 28 and a half years. I'm a C7 incomplete quadriplegic. I've had both my kids from before my accident, so they're grown, gone. I'm a grandma, and I do a lot of things. I serve on the board for a spinal cord injury network. I serve on a board for a children's fund for families with disabled children. I'm an artist. I'm an ADA advocate for just freelancing for anybody that needs advocacy here in my area. As for COVID and how it affected me, all it did was keep me home. But on that, my husband and I, we went hiking almost every single day on the trails in the woods out here because there's lots of trails. And so we stayed active and, busy all the time. And I work from home anyway, so it kind of wasn't too much different than any other day.
I love what you said, just about COVID and how you and your husband, you went hiking, right? Like COVID was stressful for a lot of people, right? But you managed to figure out something else to do. Not that like you guys probably didn't do that already, but it's just cool because it's just one of those things as, we begin this discussion. It's really about figuring out what are we going to do essentially when we are faced with insurmountable odds in order to really take a collective breath, especially in the disability community. And I think it also can help change the perspective of people because they kind of think, I know I had a nurse one time tell me, you're housebound. I'm like, no, I'm not. And that's like a trigger almost for me because I'm like, no, I do more than just sit around the house and do donuts. It's like, that's just not what this journey is all about. But I can't wait to hear everyone's feedback about just how they deal with, things in terms of with their wellness. So as we've been talking about earlier, life can be stressful. The daily grind of going to work, taking care of family, and the myriad of responsibilities that come with being an adult is tiresome. Though we may say, I don't feel like adulting today, the truth is we can't reverse the hands of time. Daily multitasking is even more difficult with a disability. Our most basic activities of daily living aren't as easy to perform after injury and may require a significant amount of assistance. This can be overwhelming, and we still need a healthy way to find relief from time to time. According to the American Institute of Stress, 120,000 people die from work-related stress and related healthcare costs, total an estimated $190 billion annually. How can we rest and recuperate in the midst of our daily storms and reduce these statistics? So tonight, we're going to work out solutions together and just bounce ideas and feedback for not only each other that's here in the group, but also for those who are going to be listening and somebody gets injured, however many seconds or minutes per day. And there's thousands of people who suffer and get an SCI each and every year. So they're going to need this feedback. All right. So according to the CDC, adults with disabilities report experiencing frequent mental distress almost 5 times as often as adults without disabilities. How do you experience stress? And what are the symptoms when you feel overwhelmed? And have you found anything that helps, such as yoga, meditation, or prayer? And Harley, will begin with you.
Okay. Well, I'm a jokester. I'm sarcastic. So for me personally, I'd say I'm already mental. But when I feel stressed and stuff, I just go outside. I live in the Pacific Northwest. It's very wooded. So I just go out to nature and breathe. The other thing is I have books like The Secret. I have The Daily Word. I have a lot of uplifting videos on YouTube. Number one thing that keeps me pretty stress-free in my life is I haven't owned a TV in over 10 years. I refuse to own a TV. There's too much negativity and, just negativity. I'll just leave it at that. I do paintings for physical and mental therapy. So for me, I upcycle cupboard doors. During COVID, I did weekly check-ins with anybody and everybody that's a part of the Spinal Cord Injury Network. And I didn't realize I was making an impact because I didn't get a lot of feedback or responses back from people. But about a year after, probably in early 2021 is when I started getting a few emails back from people saying, thank you for these weekly check-ins. They're what kept me going. And in my weekly check-ins, it wasn't about, what are you doing? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? It was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. What about you? This is what I'm, been reading. What are you reading? Are you reading? This is what I'm doing to keep myself busy. What are you doing to stay busy? So I made all my emails interactive.
Wow. Let me tell you why I'm saying wow. I'm saying wow simply because we all, sometimes when I think about like detoxing in terms of dealing with stress and what have you, my automatic reaction can be to isolate myself so I can breathe. But reaching out to other people and checking on them, that's really selfless. Like that's pretty awesome. That's cool. I'm just gonna move on just for a second. But Ayana, how about yourself? Like when you experience stress, what are some of the things that come to your mind, and what do you have you found that helps you throughout your journey?
First, I pray when I do get stressed out a lot of times, and then I get my triggers a lot. I also listen to uplifting music and read uplifting books. Conversate with a lot of my friends. A lot of my friends is pretty much my motivation along with my family. So when I get kind of down, because it's normal, for us to go through with spinal cord injuries, we go through sometimes down times and not feeling 100, I can say 50%. But what I do is that I try to think back to what brought me this far, or what did you do last year when you were dealing with something and you came through that last year. So what can you do this year to get through and motivate yourself to kind of like get it together? I mean, I went through COVID, kind of bad time because it was like isolation, just like you said that, when you kind of like go through stress, you kind of like isolate yourself. I do the same thing. I get in my room and I'll just stay in my room all day and kind of like isolate myself. But then I got to a point and I was saying, I can't keep doing this. I mean, this is something that I've been dealing with since I was 16 years old. And it's like, you have to, if you want a different result, you got to do something different. And every year you're doing the same things. When you get triggered, you isolate yourself. So what I started doing was I'll call like family or friends and just get myself to be able to talk to them, not talk about my situation, but talk about something else, that would take my mind off the situation.
Nice. Anybody ever feel like, in that process of like talking to others kind of helps out? How about yourself, Jason?
Definitely. Talking to others helps a lot. I also have a habit of retreating, and that's the opposite of what helps, which makes it difficult to kind of turn that corner. So, but once you start reaching out to people, I think that kind of spirals upward and really helps things out. I also find that helping other people really makes a big difference. I know in the past, working with the Independent Living Center or other things like that, helping other people is very healing as a way of growing and learning and dealing with everything.
Do you feel like, for, those of us who have kind of been, I think generally speaking, most of us have been paralyzed for a while. Do you find that as you've gotten older and grown with your injury, has the stress levels become harder or have they become easier to deal with?
I had a really powerful experience when I had my accident that was spiritual. And so I depended on, not depended on, but I reached for prayer and just gratitude a lot more, I think. And as the years grind on, it's sometimes difficult to get back to that level of optimism.
That's honest, for real. Definitely. John, John Sigworth, how about you? Like, what do you do, like, in terms of,
The
trying,
symptoms?
yeah, like, yeah, like, what are some of those symptoms that you kind of experience, and what have you found, especially as a person who got injured in India, right? And so in India, is like essentially the cradle of yoga, right? You and I have spoken about that. Did you, like, in that initial time period, tap into that after you answer that question about the different triggers?
Yeah, so so my injury, I was very lucky to have an immediate sense of peace after my injury that lasted for about a month, for the whole time that I was in India. And part of that may have been because I couldn't feel my injury, so I didn't have to deal with the pain right away. Part of that had to do with I had my mom and my brother come and be with me like the next day. I was surrounded by a lot of loving, caring people, so I was super lucky with that. But the real, and another part was, part of that piece was, as Jason mentioned, like I had, it felt like a spiritual experience, getting injured, because every other member of my family had some kind of life-threatening situation happen with them that I had witnessed. And, I had a very Christian family, so I was brought up in that, and I had a very strong belief myself. And I just had a sense that what had just happened to me was an opportunity to understand others. And, I started making friends in the hospital, and that was just kind of confirmation, like, these are people who I wouldn't have met without my injury. Let's see what happens. So, so faith and belief has a lot to do with that. And kind of when you're in a situation that you can't change, right? Like, you can't go outside, you can't, like, pick up a new hobby. Like, when you're in an intractable, difficult situation, relying on, like, what gives your entire life and, like, sense of self purpose is really important. And if you don't have that, figuring out what that is really worthwhile. But that's what it felt like for me. But it was afterwards. So symptoms of getting stressed are self-isolation, and most of the time that's because of either deadlines or feelings of failure or embarrassment. And I do simple things. I start cleaning my room. I start organizing my desk. I start asking for extensions, pleading with professors, please, can I not turn in the paper tomorrow, but like in a few days. So all of those things, just trying to release pressure or find other things that are going well when everything else seems to be falling apart. A nice folded drawer of clothes can do wonders. But yeah, unfortunately, in those moments, I don't reach out to others as often. It's more like after the fact that I find it to be, very validating. Like, oh, I've been through this terrible experience. Now I can reach out to others and encourage them with it. But besides that, the other thing is calling your mom. Calling your parents really helps. Easiest ones to call.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I want Jess to kind of answer this question just because, right now you guys are the only, like, couple on this call. But, like, how do you guys collectively deal with stress? Like, not just, from an SCI perspective, but, just from the able body standpoint, like when you see John maybe stressing out and you think, I'm walking, I can only imagine what he's going through. How do you detox like for yourself?
Yeah, I think recently, I guess something that happened recently was we had COVID in January too. It seems like everyone did. And after that, I'm just trying to think. After that, John was weaker, and so he was having trouble transferring, which is never a problem. And so you feel worried, and I worry, but I don't say it so much, I guess. So I guess trying to just say, well, let's see what we can do. Let's practice this. Don't worry. Let's just what is hurting? Okay, do you feel good? Like kind of every day, just checking on him, I guess. And because I know he was feeling bad about it. And then this exercise. Let's go to exercise. Let's do what we can to see if this gets better. And yeah, I think that like doing stuff that can help together. And so we started going to the gym together. So which also helps me because I think if I have a stress, I'm always calling John first. So I'm always like, John, let's talk. And I really like to, and then we go to the gym. And then calling a friend or something like that. So I think, yeah, just trying to see what we can do together.
That's cool. I like that you said working together. I mean, today after I had to go to the VA for something, but when we left, me and my wife, we had to stop at the mall, and instead of like rushing to get in there to get back home and stuff like that, we stopped and we had dinner together. And then I told her, I said, I'm going to bring this up during the course of the podcast, but I said, this is doing a lot just for my own personal wellness, just sitting here with you in this moment. Our kids are fine. They're at home. They're with my mom and, giving us time because, we get stressed out too. You know what I mean? Just as parents, as a couple, and just living as individuals. But also when you learn to go through something jointly, it oftentimes bring you closer, so which is a beautiful thing. Sandy, what are some of your triggers for stress, and how do you manage when those tension levels get high?
When I'm stressed out, one of the hardest thing is to deal with is lack of motivation and communication. I'm not motivated to do anything, and I'm not asking for help in the right times. I just go into a blah state. But because before my paralysis, I was already an advocate for mental health, because I had dealt with a lot of family members who dealt with mental illness and stuff like this. I'm a great component. I love different series of therapy, from music therapy to singing to dancing to praying to aromatherapy, massage therapy, every type of therapy you can think of. I really try to immerse myself into those types of things so that I won't feel like I'm missing out on anything, or I feel like I'm not productive or something like that. Because when I was on my 2 feet, I was so independent and adventurous and going places and doing things. And now that I'm in other people, I have to ask for help for so much. And I depend physically on other people to do certain things for me. It could be quite overwhelming. And sometimes you can feel like you've lost like your true self. But since I've been like learning all these different types of therapies, including like just so many different ones, but one of the ones that I stay true to, like Jonathan, is I call my parents. They're my accountability partners for motivation. Sometimes like when you really don't know how to get yourself out of that funk mentally, I call them and they're like, girl, you know how far you've been, where you come from. Like, remember this day, remember, you got this. It's been worse and you've been able to overcome this far. You've made it 100% through the times that you've gone through every difficulty in your life. You'll make it through this one. So tell yourself, convince yourself of all the things that you've already conquered through, the Lord Jesus Christ, and you'll be okay. And that's what's made me so strong, those kinds of pep talks.
Wow. I just love you talking about therapy and speaking to someone to deal with that, just to prevent the, that wave of stress that, can affect one's mental health. I just hear vulnerability. And during these times of trying to help your wellness, it's important that, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to say, look, right now, today, I'm not doing that well. In order to recover, I'm going to have to voice myself. I'm going to have to be able to express my thoughts and not bottle it up. So I think that's real cool. I just want to move on to Tahira real quick. Tahira, as we've grown to know each other, you seem very laid back and chill. Like, you take things as they are, but like, what are some things that you have that kind of like, trigger you, and how do you deal with those things?
There we go. Okay. So, yeah, as far as I don't get too stressed out, I don't have family really to count on for something like that. They're not too invested, but nobody's close. Right now, I really just kind of I have a few friends, no one really close. I have a therapist now, and I was really just lucky in getting someone involved in this experiential therapy that's been like all the rage for the past 10 years or so. And apparently I think a lot of my sort of upbringing kind of led to me being a bit flatline often. And he did ask me the other day if my injury has ever really landed for me. And I said, I guess it hasn't. I just kind of roll with the punches. I've always been like that. And so I suppose if that's going to happen, maybe it'll still happen sometime in the future. So that's a rude awakening I have to look forward to. But other than that, I don't really, I don't really get too stressed out. I'm concerned about like a bruise I have that may or may not turn into a pressure sore. And I actually think I can go for an X-ray tomorrow. And so that could be stressful. But hopefully I'll be able to do something about that. But there's definitely, especially with a high level spinal cord injury, it's kind of always a little something going on. And it doesn't get easier, I don't think, with time. And then circulation issues and all that. So, but I did discover meditation a couple of years before my injury. And since my injury, I've never been consistent with it again. But I find that to be really helpful. And I was really surprised because I was never spiritual or religious. But for some reason, meditation does make a difference. And I've heard it can kind of affect the way the sort of the brain is wired. So it's like a real effect. But I think that's helpful. And I've heard about wheelchair yoga, but I haven't. We did have someone come by the in an inpatient facility and show us kind of sitting yoga, and that was pretty good. That was helpful, but something like that would probably be a good thing.
Yeah, but, that's true. Like I watched a lot of videos in preparation for this podcast, and I watched some wheelchair yoga videos, and I try to even practice some of it, and I find with the deep breathing helps out a lot. Just taking in a breath, inhale, exhale. I used to think that stuff was just like not for me, and I'm just like, nah, I'm going to be breathing and thinking about my problem or whatever at the same time, which is going to make me hyperventilate or something. But it actually works when you start, changing your mindset towards it. John Schetzel, I know that you're, being more of an observer and what have you, but if you could just quickly over the course, I know you don't have an injury, but over the course of your life, how has, because, with age comes wisdom, how have you learned to approach, stress and, just tell us a little bit about how you deal with things.
Okay. First, let me say, I will never be able to understand how difficult it is to have a spinal cord injury, to be restricted and limited in those ways. And I'm listening to a select group of those folks who have encountered that terrible injury and that terrible restriction and have done so well at, given the restrictions, given the injury, at looking at interesting, unique, creative, diverse ways of dealing with stress and ways of, you can't overcome, but you can certainly mitigate the impact of the injury itself. I mean, I'm listening to a group that covers coast to coast, and interesting, fascinating places in the middle of the country, and as individuals willing to share deep thoughts, willing to share what has worked for them, willing to share what has not worked for them, and they are creative and helpful in so many ways. Corey, you're right. Aging is sort of a different experience of limitation and restriction. I'm going to be 75 in a week or so, and you wind up dealing with restrictions of things that you no longer can do as well as you used to be able to do them, and it's awfully hard to accept that. You find yourself slowed down and limited and restricted, and your world kind of narrows. It comes together. And what I'm so impressed with from the spinal cord injured folks that I encounter, and again, it's a select group. You guys are all very special. When I started with Jonathan and Corey, then you, is you can look beyond the restrictions. You can be creative in new and different ways of being able to expand out. And I'm thinking about that even from the perspective of growing older, and adapting in some ways. But it's adapting to a new normal, and I remember my first conversations with Jonathan was, it was, my looking and trying to figure out how he was able to adapt to normal. And the reality was we're looking at two different kinds of normal. And the new normal he was looking at was a direction that, I think as a culture, as a society, COVID and the experience of limitation, or age and the experience of limitation, along with the appearance of new resources, the internet that allows you guys to talk globally or continentally wide. Folks like me have a lot to learn from folks like you, and I am fascinated by it. And to the extent I can, I want to be helpful in it. Does that make sense?
No, that's absolutely perfect, and it's a great segue. You talked about with age, learning that new sense of normalcy. You lost a step, or in sports, athletes do it all the time. If you were a high flyer and you're dunking on everybody earlier in your career, you develop a jump shot. You know what I mean? And if you don't develop the jump shot, you know what you go into, you learn the post game, so you figure out different ways to be effective in the society that you're in, and figuring out different ways culturally. And, just as you spoke to John about it, I think we all kind of have that same shared experience, whether you have a disability or not. Like Jason, for an example, right? You live out in like a kind of wild, I don't want to say wildlife preserve, but, you live out in nature, you know what I mean? And for me, I'm like thinking about, if I lived out in nature, I'm thinking about, can my wheelchair get over the dirt, the rocks? Like, can my, if it snows, who's going to plow me out and whatnot? How have you kind of readjusted your mind to your new norm, post injury?
Well, when I was in rehab, they said to me, in a more urban area, it's going to be more accessible. So you might want to consider moving to an area that's more. And I said, no. I said, I'd much rather make where I live accessible. And so it's taken me a long time to come full circle with it, but I really feel like I'm starting to make an impact that way. So like I said, giving back is a big part of that. But as far as the new normal goes, I think we all have experiences that change us, and either you adapt and overcome, or you die. So I mean, really, I think it's a survival thing that's in us all, and you don't know how you're going to react to something until you're faced with it.
That's very true and very well said. Ayana, how about yourself? Like, would you call it like a new norm? For somebody who has been paralyzed since childhood, or have you just kind of viewed it as like it just is what it is? There's no other upside to it than what I know, because it's been so long.
I look at it as I had the best of both worlds. I mean, two lives. My first life, I was able to walk and do everything, and everything that children can do. And then at 16, it was time to grow up, and it was time to become an adult, because I had new responsibilities, and I had to learn new things about myself and take care of myself and be able to understand what's going on with me. So I think it's just adjusting. I would say nobody's normal. What is normal? I mean, I can't say normal, but I can just say being able to have the best of both worlds. All of us did have a time to be able to walk, and we know what it is to be able to drive a car before we got into an accident, or be able to feel what water feels like dripping down your leg before you got into an accident, or being able to, you're walking and you hit your small toe against the dresser or something like that. You're able to kind of like reflect when other people have a conversation, and it's like, I remember that, and they look at you like, do you really? And it's like, yeah, you can remember certain things. I ain't been in a wheelchair my whole life, but certain things you can conversate with somebody else, because at the age that you had your disability, I mean, we were able to do some things, So I just think that, we had the best of both worlds. We're able to walk, and now we're meeting people and just trying to change lives with people looking at us and giving them the motivation, and say, look, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, this happened to me, but, just as well as you with your two legs and your two arms, you could keep on going, just like me with just my two arms. My legs are my arms now. So, it's just something I have to get adjusted to. When you get adjusted to it, I don't think it becomes, I know you asked the question, as you get older, do you think it becomes harder? I think it does, because at 16, when I was younger, I felt like I was defenseless. I can say like nothing can touch me. Like, you still had that small mind thinking. I mean, you were able to do anything. I mean, you were trying anything. You was getting yourself up off the floor, and, in matters of different times. Now I'm 45, and it's like, I could not imagine that I used to do those type of things, getting myself up off the floor in 10 minutes or 5 minutes. But now, as you get older, it's kind of challenging, because just as well as an able-bodied body ages, our body ages well.
Absolutely. I like what you said. Just piggybacked off of, what Jason said about, you kind of learn to adapt. But that question, I'm going to throw to Harley, because what is normal? What does that mean, Harley? What's your perspective?
I'm kind of like Ayana on that one, because I became a quadriplegic on my 19th birthday. And before that, I had horses. I had my two kids. I worked 3 jobs. And so for me, I never had a driver's license, but I drove. And so I was a crazy country kid. I grew up on a single lane road. I mean, my street sign was a 4x4 post. And so I had ADHD. I still have ADHD, but I grew up doing everything, climbing cliffs barefoot with no equipment, diving in any river right across the street. And so for me, and nowadays, now that I'm older and I've been in a chair 28 years, some of my old horse injuries from getting bucked off and stuff are starting to haunt me, as well as all the years of being a quadriplegic are starting to take its toll. But normal is whatever you want it to be. It's whatever you make it. And your normal is your life. And so for me, I've been working with the elderly and people with disabilities since I was 5 years old. So I already knew what it was like to be with people that were unique and different, special. And that's actually how I bought my first horse. Was I was volunteering at a riding academy for handicapped children. And this horse was donated and she was too high strung. So they were selling her and I was like, I'll take her. And yeah, and since my accident, I had 6 years of like a total emotional breakdown. Who was I? How can I survive after this? And then I started, really soul searching. And my new normal now is I've done a lot of things that I wanted to. I've ridden a horse since my accident. I've done modeling. I've been in the Ms. Wheelchair pageant and represented my state as Ms. Wheelchair Washington, USA.
Go ahead.
I haven't driven a car yet, but there's so many other things that I've done since my accident that I did before my accident. So for me, it's just the world is a playground. You only have one life. Enjoy it, live it, and push the boundaries.
I know. Hey,
Can I throw something in real quick?
Oh, my husband wants to pipe in real quick. Is that
go
okay?
ahead, other half.
Other half, I like that. Anyways,
Come on in.
the 3 words I would use to encourage Harley to pursue whatever it is that she wanted to pursue was always the 3 words were, what's stopping you? What's stopping you?
I like that. That's definitely motivational, and that's kind of like an affirming quote or words, like from that. Definitely I can respect that, because I had a nurse tell me she actually lost one of her fingers in some type of machine, and she said to me, I stopped saying why me, but what now? Right. So you have to kind of pick a point from where you got hurt and you say, all right, there's steps I got to take afterwards. My point of origin wasn't here. At one point I was a baby, but then after baby, I walk. And after I walk, I begin to run. And after I begin to run, I go off and do all these other things that make me unique and make me who I am. This is just another part of that journey. I would say, John, what about you? Like, do you redefine normal? What has become normal? Is that just like, hey, that's like everyday typical stuff? How do you look at it? Sorry, John. I was going to say that. John Sigler.
Yeah, I think you just touched on it. When I think of normal, you could use it in 2 different ways, right? You can say this situation or this environment feels normal, or you can say like I feel normal. And if we think about it, like I feel normal, or like my state of normalcy, what we're really talking about is our sense of belonging, our sense of security, our sense of comfort and of value, and we can feel normal in some pretty abnormal and unhealthy situations. If we allow ourselves to, like, if you're in an abusive situation and you allow yourself to feel normal and kind of accept that as your sense of value, that becomes your normal, right? So in terms of like, back when, what I said at the very beginning, like the injury, if you don't have something at your core that kind of helps define you or gives your entire life purpose, let alone like if your legs are working or if you can ride a bike again, but I'm talking about like, your life, capital L, whether it's giving back or trying to solve one of these big global problems we're all facing, what's your mission in life? What's your purpose in life? What makes you on a day-to-day basis? What gives your life meaning? That's kind of what normal really is. That's what our sense of normal depends on. And we can go through our lives kind of feeling normal, and not really know not really having defined it. But I feel like an injury like this, or maybe it's growing old or facing mortality, that kind of makes us have to face it. I think that's what it means. And with that, the second part of the question, despite the limitations, is there room for improvement? Like that is once you have that, the sky is the limit, because you have a secure footing from which to improve. You have a secure place from which to grow. So that's what I would say about that.
No, I definitely agree. It's almost like you renew your purpose, and your limitations are only pretty much what's in your mind. Sandy, what's your perspective on normalcy, and especially as it pertains to your view of yourself? Because for those who don't know, Sandy was a fox before this.
Watch the fox. Stop playing. Anyways, when I first got paralyzed and when I was still in the hospital, they sent another quadriplegic to come talk to me. And I bombarded him with questions. I was like, what do you do for fun? What's going on? How do you got back to normal? But he got paralyzed a little bit younger than I did. I got paralyzed at 28. So I was already a drinker. I was a sailor. So I used to hang out with the guys, do a whole bunch of stuff. And then when I was limited to do those things, I still can do those things now, but it was in a different way. I don't want to say it's not normal anymore. I'm still my normal self. I just have to I'm limited in the way that I can do it, but it doesn't stop me from pushing myself to doing things that I didn't even know I was capable of until now. And I don't think there's anything to improve, but I can gain from change, like especially with technology, how great technology is right now, bro. Like I don't mind putting a little Fitbit in my head. I mean, everybody's scared about the sign of the beast and stuff like that, but no, I believe in God. I believe that God is the creator of all things. He makes technology, and he's not going to put me in a position where I need to doubt my allegiance to him. And if it is the case, then I won't do it. But with technology, all these you can zoom yourself in these little electromagnetic iRobot suits and stuff like that. I'm willing to do all of that. So it's all in your mind and the way that you look at certain things. My favorite verse is Philippians 4:6. Don't worry about anything, pray about everything. Thank God for what you got and just continue asking him for what you need. And when I'm changing my mind on a constant basis, I don't worry about the things I can't do. I'm focused on all the things that I'm capable of, and I'm glad that I'm still capable, even though I'm disabled.
You know what? And that reminds me of, the prayer of serenity is, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, right? So you can't, for you and what you're saying, and I think it applies to, everyone, or can apply to everyone, is that, I think dwelling on one thing or the next isn't helpful, right? And in finding that you don't dwell on one thing from the next, you create, a different kind of mindset, because you are able to move on. But even earlier, before you said that, you're just like, I didn't change. My situation may have changed, but I didn't change, so my norm didn't change, because your perspective is still, essentially, you're still Sandy at the end of the day, regardless. Tahiri, what's your perspective on it all? Tahiri, you there? Tahiri?
Yeah, I had to do a full screen again, so I could hit unmute.
Okay.
As far as my perspective on it, yeah, everybody's had really interesting feedback on that. But yeah, I would say that there's not, I don't think there's a limit to what we can do. I think a lot of us have to do things in a different way, but we can have a lot of the same types of experiences, I think, that everyone else can. I think if anything, we may need to be more creative or more open to doing things differently. But certainly we can do a lot of the same things, have a lot of, plenty of experiences and things like traveling. And those things are not out of the question because we're disabled. So I would say, and I think a lot of it too just has to do with where we are in our own heads. And so it's not, I don't think the paralysis is really the main thing, but maybe accepting that life is a bit different now and we may have to do things differently, I think, is a good start.
Indeed, indeed. And like I said, I think that's true in all cases and whatnot. Life is just an constant fluctuating thing. So what can you do when variables change? You have to, again, what Jason said earlier, just about learning to adapt. I just want to get John Chetso in here and Jess. What is your idea of normal as you guys peer in through the window of disability as you're watching us? I mean, Jess, you could take that.
I mean, I with John, I think, well, from what I see with, living with John and having him as my spouse, I mean, I enjoy my time with him. I guess sometimes we do have to do things differently, in terms of maybe if we think about times, so things take maybe more time for us, or we have to plan a little more to do things if we want to do things. But I think something with John is, I think that he's always willing to try stuff and do stuff with me, and that makes it, that makes it very easy for me. So I think he this new normal, or with his disability is, even though the things are different, I think having that willingness to try stuff. And for example, when we met, going to Colombia, where it's less accessible, and maybe you don't know what you're gonna find, how difficult it's gonna be.
Yeah.
So I think even though things were different after the disability, he was willing to take those risks and as you have all been saying, being more creative.
Awesome.
Yeah.
John Schutzel,
Yes.
tell me a little bit about, just briefly, about like your idea of normalcy as you see it from your own life, and just something that I would say affirming, because we're all, God be willing, we're all going to get older and whatnot, and there are people out there literally who fear age, especially in the disability community, because you get older, more health risk and concerns. So, give us some wisdom, that you would say could help the next person who's listening in on the podcast from your perspective.
I don't know whether I can give you wisdom. Wisdom is a big ask. What I will tell you is, and listening to this, I'm sort of both more convinced and that normal is restrictive. Normal is not a positive word. It's a limitation, and it's restrictive in the sense of normal doesn't change, right? So you get a normal at 20, a normal at 30, a normal when you get married. That's not normal for a young married person. And it's a set of expectations that are restrictive and not creative, and and not changing. And so, I've been accused through my life of not being very normal, and it was not meant as a compliment. And I've always taken it as a compliment, because it says that you are not living within a set of restrictions. Some restrictions you've got to live within. You don't intrude on other people. You don't do bad things. But normal as doing what other people do gets old before I do. And I think leaving it behind in favor of whether it's sort of sliding into it as thinking about the new normal, a changing normal, my personal normal, it sort of helps. But it's judging by what other people think, see, need, and do, rather than what you've learned, seen, and developed as an individual. And I think, and everyone has commented on those few other people that they turn to. And I think that's true. You develop a group of, we can call them friends, we can call them peers, we can call them, consolers and counselors. But, those are the people that you look to, and you sort of test whether, this is too far out of the norm to be acceptable. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. That I gather from that, normal is restrictive, limits creativity. And I think that's the absolute truth when it comes down to how we go about, our life. And I think that's definitely, like, again, when I say wisdom, just, wise words, you know what I mean? And that's what I took from that, and thank you for that. It makes a lot of sense. I just want to get everybody else in real quickly. Tahira, what are some like words of affirmation you would give to somebody to help make their disability a little bit easier?
An affirmation maybe to someone else who's disabled.
Yeah, somebody's gonna, watch the podcast and need some, form of encouragement. What would you say?
I guess I would say, think about what you really want to do and what your passion is. And whatever your passion is, whether it's the same from before your injury or if it's a little bit different, you can do something to accommodate what your passion is, what you really want to do. And I think also this injury is kind of an opportunity as well to reach out to other people who are similarly situated, which I had not really thought about doing, before my injury. I didn't think a lot about disabilities or things like that. So there's also kind of an opportunity to, I think, be more giving and be grateful. But I would say, whatever it is you really want to do, I mean, think about how you can still do that. There is a way. So I would say that.
Nice. Sandy.
My affirmation, I have it on my desktop. It says, I'm so happy and grateful now, living in light, love, peace of mind, happiness, financial wealth, prosperity, success, and good health. And I know the 4 pillars of life is health, wealth, love, and happiness. So I try to incorporate as much as positive energy towards all 4 of those aspects. I'm loved, I'm happy, I'm healthy, and I'm grateful. Well, it's a lot of great ones, but I try to incorporate all of those into one affirmation every day.
Nice. Harley.
Goodness, when it comes to affirmations, I know when I was still in ICU after my accident, a nurse, actually, I guess he was my first physical therapist. His name was Daniel. And he walked in and he's like, I forgot only 3 words for you. And I was like, okay. And he's like, 2 words, sorry, 2 words. And it's cowboy up. And for those country kids and cowboys and cowgirls, for us, that means that you're at the bottom. There's only one way, and that's up. Nowadays, something positive for me is I don't see myself as disabled. I'm only challenged. The word, ability is in the word disability. The word, many see the word impossible. I see I'm possible. Also, I have 0 expectations in life. I have hope, I have aspirations, but I have 0 expectations, because to me, expectation is the first stepping stone to a letdown, a failure. Because if something doesn't live up to the expectation, no matter how great or small, if it doesn't live up to that expectation, that can bring a negative reaction mentally, emotionally. And so I just live life every day to the fullest, because tomorrow's not promised. My also personal motto is normal is boring.
Facts. Ayana.
I would say that affirmation to motivate someone that's in a wheelchair just like us. I would basically say, you can do anything you put your mind to. Because there's no limit that we can't. Technology now, and they're making I think this disability is more out there than able bodies is out there now. You see everywhere somebody is disabled, and you're able to capture them in doing anything. Mountain climbing, just being able to do anything. So you don't put yourself, I feel like you don't put yourself in a box. You got to take yourself, unwrap yourself and take yourself out that box and look around and see, what can I get into, start new things, and, not be afraid of being able to allow yourself to be able to go and do different things that you think that others may be talking about you or may look at you different. You can do anything.
I like that. Jason.
Yeah, my mother was a big support of me after my accident, and she was always teaching me to be more independent from as young as I can remember. So that was always a goal of her to make me as independent as possible. But she used to have a saying. She said, if it was candy, you could find it. So I'd be like, Mom, where are my shoes? She'd be like, well, if it was candy, you could find it. And so my point is, if you want it bad enough, you'll find a way to get it. And I used to say that too, especially early on when I was still trying to figure a lot of things out. I'd say, if you leave me alone with it long enough and I want it bad enough, I'll figure out a way to get it.
I like that.
The other part of that was
cool.
to keep me going when I was trying to do something and struggling was I will until. In other words, I will try until I can. So never give up.
Awesome. Jonathan Sigworth.
Yeah, so a word of affirmation that really helped me. I was in the hospital in India, and there was this old British missionary guy. He like walked in on a cane, right? And he just held my hand tight, and he must have thought there was going to be some kind of miracle or something. But he was like, "Never give up, keep that fire, never give." And I was just, the energy from this guy was so inspiring, so motivating. Like I was like, yeah, okay. So, we can take energy and motivation and inspiration from those around us. And when you become, the other thing I'll say is, I'm going to trade my definition of normal for John's, and I'll go even further. There is no such thing as normal. It's a fiction. It's an illusion. And what happens, when you become like us, when you grow old, you become frail, you get a disability, is you realize that nothing is normal. We are all abnormal in our own ways. We are all disabled in our own ways. And the fact that we can redefine and look from different perspectives at the meaning of these words and the meanings of these concepts just goes to show that it's all valuable. Your perspective matters. And this experience that you're going through, no matter how hard it is greatly important, and you can do a lot of good things with it. So hold on to that and don't lose sight of who you are, even as you experience the abnormality of our bodies and the abnormality of our lives. And you yourself, you are still valuable. You are still you in the midst of that.
Well, that was well said, Professor Sigworth. Man, that was cool, man. I am mentally clapping right now for you. And I love that that gentleman told you to never give up the fight, because I just see this man with a cane and just like, I don't know, the whole British flag on his back, and just never give up. You're only going to get better after this.
Never surrender.
Never surrender. No, that's cool, man. Listen, guys, at the end of the day, and those who are going to be viewing this, again, we want everyone to know that there's just no one right way solution to get well again, to recover from anything that you may be experiencing. I think at the point of it all is that you strive towards figuring out a way to get better, to improve. And that does not mean improve so now that I'm walking again, improve so that I can drive a car again, improve so I can kind of fit into the box of normalcy, because that just may not be your story. And your story is really, at the end of the day, what makes you unique, because no one can be in your shoes. Nobody can say that they've experienced 100% of what you experience, and we can all learn something from each other, even if we disagree on any particular topic or something that you may subscribe to. We don't all share the same goals, but what we do share in common is humanity. And if we could just have a little bit more empathy with each other, it would help us all get to the place where we need to be. And if you don't take anything else from this podcast, one thing you will take from it is, if it's candy, you'll find it. And so I hope that everybody tonight as you relax and unwind, you find something that is of value and that brings peace to you as you rest. But thank you guys for participating in our More Than Walking video podcast discussion. Please stay tuned in and join us next month and sign up for the More Than Walking newsletter at morethanwalking.com to learn about the topic we will cover next. Until next time, remain encouraged, stay hopeful, and above all else, be aware. Enjoy your night, everyone.